I love UFC Apex Events. I love everything about them. The energy, the eyeballs it brings towards these fighters, and how exciting these fights are, and especially the quality of the fights. And the main reason I love these Apex events are because of the fact that I am a stupid idiot. And if you think there's absolutely nothing wrong with UFC Apex events in 2024, and you like them too, guess what? You are stupid too. I appreciate what the UFC Apex has done to the sport. Back in the pandemic, it was the only thing. We couldn't have real big venues, so the Apex was the only choice. But the last time I checked, we are in September 2024 and not in 2020. We don't have an ongoing pandemic and everything is back to normal. So isn't it the right time for us to move away from the Apex and have real big venues all around the world? Yes, the answer to that is yes. So why is it not happening? There are actually two main reasons for this, but both of these reasons start from this same root problem. The UFC average about 44 events per year. I mean, we started off as a couple of pay-per-views per year, then a couple of pay-per-views and then some fight nights. Now 44 events per year, which is almost every single week. The main reason for this 44 number of events is due to the UFC's partnership with ESPN. So this is not just UFC wanted to do a bunch of events, but they are contractually obligated to do this many events for ESPN. And that is the root or the start of the problem. And then it drives into two different branches, and I'll start with the first branch. The first reason is the logistic issue that arises from this high number of events due to the ESPN contract. The best way to understand this logistic issue is to know what goes into one UFC event. UFC events cost millions of dollars to put out. Just one event would cost somewhere around 8 figures. This does not include the fighter pay. And that's the cost I'm talking about. Let's look at the other things. Every event should be sanctioned by an athletic commission. So you're talking about officials for the weighing, to monitor fighters' weight cuts, to monitor fighters' health and their medications, and then referees, judges, and every other official that glues them together. And that's just the commission. Let's talk about the security. You need security inside the event, outside the event, special people who come to watch the event, and then to individual fighters, the UFC staff, to the journalists and the media members and everybody else. And then the venue itself, you need to book a venue way before, like months before, and then promote it to the local audience to get them hyped up and push them to buy tickets. Now let's add drug testing, fighter transportation, and most importantly, book multiple hospitals, ambulances, and a lot of medical staff months ahead for the fighters to visit before and after their fights. And this is what goes into every single UFC fight night, and I'm probably missing a couple of things too. As you can see, it's much more complicated to have a UFC fight night compared to your favorite uncle's backyard pool party. Now, because of 44 events per year and the frequency, UFC has to do this every single week, most of the time in different countries. One day in France, one day in Brazil, another day in Abu Dhabi, another day in Australia. Hey, even in the United States, one day in New Jersey and another day in New York, completely different jurisdictions. Now imagine that every single week, every single month, while handling everything in between, you're bound to run into some logistic issues. So you would have a well thought out fight night that has a lot of really cool fights inside the Apex. And I think last weekend's Jared Cannonier versus Caio Borralho was one of those events where they initially thought of having it in an actual venue, but the logistic issues came up and then they went ahead with the Apex. Now that's the first reason. The second reason is the ugly part. The second reason is not due to logistic, but simply due to, having the events for the sake of having them. Because remember, they need to chase this 44 number. So if they don't have quality fighters, they don't have meaningful fights, they still have to do these events. So you know what they do? They pick some two random blobby heavyweights, Spivak versus Tibura. Remember that fight night, which was horrible, and they put that event out because they have no option but to do the event. So we end up with a meaningless event. Even if the event was good, it just means nothing. Bad quality fighters and bad quality cards overall. And to be honest with you, these are what most of the Apex events are. Most of the Apex events are not in the Apex due to logistic issues, but due to chasing the numbers and doing them just for the sake of doing it. And I can understand the first reasoning. UFC is probably the only sports franchise that do events every single week in different countries at this much of a caliber. I completely understand them in that regards. Also, even if the audience wasn't good, the fights are meaningful. They mean something. Maybe it's eliminating a title contender. Maybe it's having an unranked but a fighter with potential breaking into the ranked scene. So the first reasoning, I can kind of understand. The second, not so much. I have to be honest with you. Remember that Amanda Lemos and some horrible other Apex cards we have had this year? I did watch them. Not because I liked watching them, but because I had nothing else going on. But even when I was watching these fights, and even if they were pretty good, I really did not care about them. Because the problem with most of these Apex fight cards are that they don't really mean anything. I don't really care about the fighters, they just exist and I don't really care about them. They are nowhere near the title, they are just fighting for the sake of fighting. Even if they win, even if they lose, there's no meaning. And this really becomes a problem when you realize most of the Apex cards are due to the second reason and not the first. Trust me, UFC would love to do their logistics properly and have the event in a proper venue because they make millions out of a real live venue. Whereas the UFC Apex, the ticket is about 5,000 to 7,000, but there aren't a lot of seats, so they only make about $75,000. And if there's something we both can agree on, and that's that Dana White and the UFC love money, and they would do absolutely everything in their power to have events in real life venues. But then they realize they have to keep doing events even though there aren't quality fighters, and they realize they can't sell out a venue and get people to actually come and watch the horrible Spivak versus Tibura cards. So what happens? Well, just do it in the Apex. You don't have to worry about filling out a venue or marketing for the venue and everything else. Just do it in the same old manner and then sell a couple of hundred tickets and then fill out the Apex. But there is a silver lining. Yep, this is not a miserable video. I actually don't really like doing miserable videos where you're just complaining over and over again and then you end the video. It makes you feel horrible as a viewer. So yeah, there is a silver lining in this case. And that silver lining is UFC Apex is closing down this November. And the cool part is not just the fact that it's closing down, but for why it's closing down. UFC Apex is going under construction for 7 months starting November, and they will be expanding the facility. This is exactly what Dana White himself had to say about this situation.
Is that to house fans, so fans can experience fights there? Or?
Oh yeah. There's going to be hospitality, more bathrooms, bigger, more seating.
Yeah,
we're expanding. So it's not like we're going to 100% go away from the Apex. The Apex is incredible for us, but we are going to start traveling fight nights more.
And this is what all it is about. Because one of the biggest problems with the UFC Apex events there's no atmosphere. We don't hear people screaming and booing fighters. We don't have the energy, the noise and the eyeballs on these fighters. So if we can have a bigger warehouse that's not big as an arena but still somewhat bigger than what we have right now, we can fill that up with more fans and solves the atmosphere, the energy and the audio and the visual problem in the background. And also we can push the UFC to do much better quality fight nights, because this time, rather than selling a couple of hundred tickets, they have to sell quite a number of tickets. Fans in Vegas can simply just stay at home and watch the fight nights in their bedroom rather than paying for the ticket if the fight nights are not good. So the expansion of the Apex facility solves two problems at once: more fans and potential for better events. UFC Apex can actually have more fans than we see in fight nights. Look at this. This is WWE Next Battleground that was in the UFC Apex. Yes, that is the same Apex we have the UFC fight nights in. And if they can already fit that many fans into the currently existing warehouse, they can fit much more to the Apex after construction. And Dana White has been pretty vocal about how much he wants to do fight nights all around the world, even though they have it in Apex. I know, he's the CEO of the company, so why don't he do it himself? You need to understand the first reason being the logistic issue, and I'm super excited to see what they do with Apex next. So fun fact, the UFC events is not on Saturday night for me, it's actually on Sunday morning time zones. So rather than me waking up on Sunday at 4 AM to watch UFC events, I had a good night of sleep. Even though the sleep was good, the last weekend did not feel the need for violence in me. We actually have a UFC Apex card this weekend, Gilbert Burns vs Sean Brady, which I'm really looking forward to. I'll be there no matter what. It's not going to hit the same as a real venue since nobody's there to cheer and boo the fighters, but hey, at least it's a good fight night event. If you like this video, can I ask you a favor? Could you consider liking this video? Then the YouTube actually pushes this video to a much bigger audience so more people can see my videos. And if you really like my videos, consider subscribing. It helps me out a lot and I appreciate it. I'll see you again in a couple of days. In the meantime, check this video out if you want to know about the UFC current champions who failed drug test in their past. Spoiler alert, Sean O'Malley might be innocent. Might, but don't worry, watch the video, you'll figure it out. And yeah, I will see you soon.